Hello there and welcome to the Cincinnati Observatory. My name is Natalia and I am the educator that will be leading you through this program. We are so excited that you joined us today because here at the observatory we love to talk about space. So let's get started. So one of the things that makes observatories special is that observatories have telescopes, and here at our observatory in Cincinnati we have two telescopes. The first one being the Mitchell telescope. This is the older of our two telescopes, and it is 175 years old, which makes it the oldest telescope in the United States. So I want you to take a really good look at this telescope. What does it look like it's made out of? If you guessed wood, you are correct, which is pretty awesome. But I have to say, a lot of people love our other telescope even more because it's bigger and it's newer and it kind of looks like a rocket ship. So let's go. This is the younger of our two telescopes. This is the Clark scope. Can you guess how old this telescope is? If you guessed 116, you are correct. And 116 may seem pretty old. However, compared to our other telescope, that's actually very young. So another awesome thing about observatories is not only do we have these big telescopes that we just showed you, but we also have these really cool dome roofs. And we use these roofs to be able to look at whatever portion of the sky that we want to, because these roofs actually move. And so I'm going to take hold of this wheel over here, and as I spin it, the roof moves anywhere around the room that you want, 360 degrees. And then after you move the roof to wherever it is that you would like to look in the sky, then after that you can come over to your telescope and move the telescope anywhere around the room. So we can move it that way, and then we can also move it side to side. If you would like to come and see these telescopes in person someday, ask your parents to make an appointment to come visit us at the Cincinnati Observatory. We would love to have you.
All right, guys, so it is time to talk about stars. So I want you to think for a second, what is a star? Yes, it is a shape, but it's also a thing that you see in the night sky. All of those pretty twinkly little lights that you see in the night sky are stars. And stars are really, really awesome because even though they look really tiny in our night sky, they're actually gigantic, even bigger than our entire planet, which is pretty cool. And we have a star that is really close to us, really close to our planet, and I wonder if you know what that star is. If you were thinking about the sun, you are correct. The sun is actually a star. Now, I want you to think about for a second, why is it that the sun looks so much bigger than all of the rest of the stars that we see at nighttime? It is because the sun is so much closer to us than all those other stars are. And because of that, it looks bigger. Kind of like if you hold something up really close to your face, it looks really big. And if you put it really far away from you on the other side of the room, it looks smaller. It's kind of like that. But not only are we going to be talking about stars today, but we are also going to be talking about constellations. Have you ever heard of a constellation before? Well, a constellation is a picture made out of stars. So it's kind of like if you look up during the daytime and you make shapes out of clouds. If you look up and you say, oh, that cloud kind of looks like a puppy, or that cloud kind of looks like a flower. It's the same thing, only you do it at night with stars instead. It's kind of like a connect the dot picture. If you've ever drawn a connect the dot picture before, that's basically what a constellation is. And it's all about your imagination. So as far as we know, constellations have been around as long as humans have existed. And the reason that we know that is that we have found cave paintings of constellations just like this one. Now, if this is a cave painting, who do you think must have made it? That's right. If you are thinking a caveman or a cave woman, that is exactly who made this. Now let's take a closer look at this picture here. So what kind of animal do you think this is in this picture? You might have guessed an ox, you might have guessed a bison, and those are close, but it is a bull. And so this is a picture of a bull or a boy cow, and you can tell that they were drawing stars in the sky because he's got all these dots here in his face and all these dots over his shoulder. But this constellation is very similar to a constellation that we still talk about today, and that is called Taurus the Bull. And you can tell that it is the same constellation that they were drawing back then, that by looking in the face, you can see there's a big dot for the eye here, very big star right there. And then the biggest giveaway are the stars over the shoulder. So in this picture, there's this star cluster right here. And in the constellation that we call Taurus today, we have this set of stars right here, this star cluster, and it is called the Pleiades, or the Seven Sisters. And that's how we know that even though they lived at a completely different time in history, on a completely different side of the world, we still see the same picture in the same set of stars, which is pretty awesome. So just like sometimes we look up at the same set of stars and see the same picture, sometimes people look up at the same set of stars and see a completely different picture. So I have another really well-known set of stars for you here. Does anybody recognize what this set of stars is called? What about now when we take away all of those extra stars in the background? If you looked at this and thought of the Big Dipper, then you are correct. This is what we like to call the Big Dipper. And when we say this looks like a Big Dipper, we're basically saying that this looks like a big giant spoon. But depending on where you go in the world, not everybody sees this as a big giant spoon. Instead, in some places, like Hawaii, they think it looks like a fishing hook. Now, if anybody here has ever seen the movie Moana, what is it that Moana follows to find Maui? She follows a set of stars in the shape of Maui's fishing hook. And so even though Moana saw it as Maui's fishing hook, she was following what we see as the Big Dipper. Or if you go to other places like Europe, they might see it as a plow, or an ox's thigh, or a caribou, or any of these other things. So because the Big Dipper is seen as so many different things, it isn't actually an official constellation. Instead, it is something called an asterism. Can you say asterism? So an asterism is a really famous set of stars that make a picture that is not one of the official 88 constellations. And the Big Dipper is one of those. But what's cool about this is that since the Big Dipper by itself is just an asterism, it is actually a part of an even bigger constellation that is one of the official 88. So I want you to look at this picture here. This is Ursa Major, the Big Bear, and the Big Dipper is somehow a part of this constellation. So I want you to look really hard at the bear's body and see if you can find where the Big Dipper is. If you are looking at the back side of the bear and in the tail of the bear, you are right. That's where the Big Dipper is. Now, there's something that's kind of weird about this bear. Is there anything that you notice that's a little strange? If you're noticing the tail, then you are correct, because bears do not have super long tails like this. Instead, they have really short, stubby tails like a bunny rabbit. And so there are quite a few different stories as to how this bear got such a long tail, and I'm going to tell you guys just one of the many stories. All right, so to start off our story, I would like you guys to close your eyes and imagine that you are in the middle of a forest a very, very long time ago. And in the middle of this forest, there is a village. And in this village, there's been a snowstorm that's been going on for almost a week. And the snow has piled up so high that it's piled up all the way over everybody's heads. And so these people who lived in this village were starting to get very, very worried because they were afraid they were going to run out of food. So the village leaders decided to go to the bravest and strongest hunter that they have ever known, and his name was Orion. So they decided to go to Orion and they asked him, Orion, will you please go up into the mountains and see if you can find food for our villagers? And Orion, of course, being the brave and strong warrior that he was, said yes. So Orion gets his bow, he gets his arrows, he slings them over his shoulder, and he starts marching up into the mountains. Now, as Orion marches through the mountains, he starts to notice that the mountains are getting closer and closer together around him until the mountains get so close together that there's something really big in his way and he just can't get past it. He just can't get around it. What do you think that thing was that was in his way? It was the biggest, the scariest bear that Orion had ever seen. And I know this bear is really tiny and cute, but you got to use your imagination that this bear is really big and really scary. And so Orion sees this bear, and while Orion is the bravest hunter, and while he is the strongest hunter, he is not the smartest hunter. So while he could have looked at this bear and thought, I could hunt that bear and my village would eat for weeks, instead Orion looks at this bear and thinks, I gotta make that bear move. And so Orion decided to go up to the bear and tap the bear on the shoulder and go, Bear, move. What do you guys think that the bear said to that? The bear gave his biggest and scariest bear growl, and Orion stepped back for a second because even though he was very brave, that was the scariest bear growl that he had ever heard. And so he sits there and he thinks, what did I do wrong there? Oh, I just wasn't polite enough to the bear. So Orion goes back up to the bear, taps her on the shoulder very lightly, and goes, Miss Bear, pretty please, with sprinkles on top and whipped cream and a cherry, will you please move out of the way just a little bit so I can get past you up into these mountains? What do you think the bear said to that? The bear gave another really big, scary bear growl. But this time, Orion was no longer scared. Orion was only hungry and getting very impatient. So Orion decides to take this bear by the tail and he starts spinning the bear around and around over his head. And as he spins the bear by the tail, his tail stretches and stretches and stretches, and he takes the bear and throws her up into the sky when she becomes a constellation forever and ever. Does that make a lot of sense? Probably not. But our story is not over yet because Orion still hasn't found food. So after that, Orion continues up into the mountains in search for food, and then he hears some sniffing and some crying. He thinks somebody might be in trouble, so he follows the sound of crying until he finds the tiniest, the cutest, what do you guys think I'm gonna pull out? Baby bear that Orion had ever seen. And so Orion goes up to Baby Bear and he says, Baby Bear, why are you crying? And Baby Bear goes, because I can't find my mom. Uh-oh, what did Orion just do with Mama Bear? He threw her up into the stars and made her a constellation forever. So then Orion starts to panic because he thinks, well, I can't leave Baby Bear alone without his mother. He'll starve. So Orion decides to take the bear by the tail and start spinning the bear around and around. And as he spins the bear, the tail stretches and stretches and stretches. And then he throws Baby Bear up into the stars. And then Mama Bear and Baby Bear can be together forever as constellations. Is that kind of a silly story? I think so too, but that's the great thing about constellations is they always have tons of really cool stories about magic and brave warriors to go along with the pictures that you see up in the sky. So you may be thinking that, well, the Big Dipper gets to be a part of a constellation story. What about the Little Dipper? Well, the Little Dipper is a part of a constellation story as well. And that is the same story that the Big Dipper is a part of, because the Little Dipper is actually the little bear from the story. But this is not the only thing that makes the Little Dipper special? Another thing that makes the Little Dipper special is this little star at the end called Polaris. Now, Polaris is also known as the North Star. Have you ever heard of the North Star before? There's a lot of rumors going around about this star that it is the biggest and brightest star in the sky, but that's not true at all. It's not very big and it's not very bright. So what makes it so special? I'm going to show you. All right, so now we are in a computer program called Stellarium, and the great thing about Stellarium is that you can use it to look up at your own night sky. And so we are going to use it today to find out why the North Star is so special. So I'm going to speed up time a little bit, and what I want you guys to do is focus really, really hard on the North Star. Here it is, right here. I want you guys to focus really, really hard on this star and notice if it's doing anything different from all of the other stars that you see. All right, so here's the North Star. What is it doing differently from all of these other stars? It's not moving. It is the only star that doesn't look like it's moving throughout the night sky. Now, is it really the stars that are moving? No, it is the Earth that moves, and it makes it look like all of the stars are moving throughout our night sky. But then why doesn't the North Star move? Well, the North Star always looks like it's staying in the same place because it is directly above the center of the North Pole, and because of that, it looks like it's never moving and that it's always pointing north. How could it be useful to people to have a star that always points north? Well, back in the day, a lot of people didn't have GPSs on their phones. They didn't have phones. They didn't even have maps. And so instead, they used the night sky as their map to be able to tell where they were going. So if you could find the Little Dipper and then you could find the star at the end, then you know where north was. And if you know where north is, and you also know where east, south, and west are, which can be very, very useful. All right, so we're going to be talking about one more constellation, and that constellation is Orion. Does the name Orion sound familiar to you? It probably does, because Orion was the brave and mighty hunter from our story. Well, through a different set of circumstances, Orion himself ended up getting turned into a constellation, and this is what he looks like. Now, does this look like a brave and mighty warrior to you? Not really. It takes a lot of imagination to look at these stars here and see a really brave hunter. But that is what we are going to try to do. All right, my friends, so we are going to do a little activity using these stars and this picture here so that we can figure out why it is that this looks like a brave and mighty hunter. So this is a little drawing of what Orion looks like in the sky. So these are all the stars that are in Orion, and then these are the imaginary lines that we use to connect the dots in this constellation. And so we're going to take a look at where the stars are on here, and then we are going to put these stars on my body where we think they would go. And so our very first star here is right at the tippy top. Where do you think that that star is on Orion's body? What part of the body do you think that would be if it's at the very tippy top? If you are thinking of the forehead, then you are correct. And so we're going to use a tiny white star on my forehead, and astronomers like to joke that Orion gets a teeny tiny white star for a forehead because he wasn't that smart. And so our second star is going to be this right here. Where do you think that goes on Orion's body? It's a little bit lower than the last star, but not too low. If you are thinking of shoulder, then you are correct. And so we're going to have a medium-sized blue star for the shoulder. I'm going to put that right here. There we go. And then our next star is right there. So it looks to be about even with the star on the shoulder, but it's not on the shoulder necessarily. It goes in a very, very silly place. If you are thinking armpits, you are correct. And you might think, ew, that's so weird. But Orion has this big red star called Betelgeuse right here. in his armpit. And Betelgeuse actually means armpit of the one. And so that's why we are putting that star there. All right, so let's take a look at where our next star is. Okay, so we actually have 3 stars in a row here. Where do you think that is? Is it about in the middle of Orion's body? What is in the middle of your body? It is your waist. And so this is actually Orion's belt. And it's called Orion's belt because those 3 little blue stars go around his waist, and you wear belts around your waist. So we're going to go ahead, take these 3 blue stars here, and we're going to put them right around where I am wearing my belt. 1, 2, 3. There we go. All right, we only have a couple stars left. So let's take a look. We've got that star right there. Where do you think that would go on Orion's body? We're getting closer to the bottom. If you are thinking of me, you are correct. So we're going to take another medium blue star. There are a lot of medium-sized blue stars inside of Orion. There we go. And I'm going to put that on my knee. All right, we have got 1 star left. It's at the very bottom of Orion. Where do you think that goes on Orion's body? If you are thinking foot, you are correct. So we are going to go ahead. I'm going to put this big blue star on my foot. It's not a medium star. It is a big star. I'll put that right there on my foot. All right, so I want you guys to use all the imagination that you have and look at these stars here on my body. And can you imagine a brave and mighty hunter holding his sword over his head with one hand and holding his shield in the other hand? This is what Orion looks like up in the night sky, at least if you use your imagination. All right, so hopefully in the future, when you see this, you will immediately think, there's the hunter from the bear story. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you are interested in anything else that the Cincinnati Observatory is doing, please check out our website at www.cincinnatiobservatory.org. Have a good day.